This is lesson 8.10, volume of a rectangular prism. Before watching the recording, make sure that you have watched the Math 6 Spy Guys video on volume and displacement, as it gives a good introduction and overview to this topic. Also, make sure that you have the 8.10 worksheet in front of you, as well as a graph sheet of paper, a pencil, eraser, and a ruler. Now, what we'll do is I will do one question with you just for this worksheet, and then I'm sure that you'll be able to figure out the rest as to how to set up your questions. As we did in 8.9, area of a rectangle, we are only going to use formulas from now on when you calculate the volume of objects. So, if you need to get those items, please pause the recording and do that right now. Now, I'm going to continue by reading the goal at the top of the page here. The goal says to develop and use a rule to calculate the volume of a rectangular prism. Under the at-home help, just follow along with me here, I'll read this out. Volume is the amount of space occupied by a 3D object, often measured in cubic centimeters or cubic meters. The units are really important, and make sure that you make note that it's cubic. It's cubic units, because essentially when you're calculating volume, you get three dimensions. You get the height, you get the length, and you get the width. Remember when we were dealing with area, we only dealt with two dimensions, the length and width of a rectangle. That's one reason why the resulting units for area are squared centimeters or squared meters. However, when we're dealing with volume, we're dealing with cubic units because we have an added third dimension of height. So the rule is the volume of a rectangular prism is equal to the product of the length multiplied by the width multiplied by the height of the prism. As you can see here at the bottom of the at-home help, the volume formula is stated, volume equals length times width times height. So my expectation is that you always show that formula from now on before you do your calculations. So let's do 1A together. Copy down what I have here. I've sketched out the rectangular prism that they're talking about. Now, I don't expect you for the other questions to sketch out the prism, but again, my expectation is that you set up your work exactly as you see it in the video in terms of the formula, the substitution, the work, and the calculations. Okay? So I'm just going to extend the page here. And again, if you need to pause the recording to copy this diagram down, please feel free to do so. I'm going to continue on. And again, the first thing that you jot down is always the formula. You're asked to calculate the volume of this rectangular prism. And remember, you have the third dimension of the height, so that will affect your units and your final answer. Volume is length times width times height. So again, my expectation, and I'm just going to block this out in red here, is that you always write this down before you do any other work underneath it. As we did in the previous lesson 8.9, we always show substitutions using brackets. Please keep the units intact as well, because centimeters times centimeters times centimeters will also give you centimeters cubed. In this case, 5 centimeters is the length, close bracket, times open bracket again, 2 centimeters, because we're showing substitution, is the width, times in brackets, 1 centimeters is the height. Now, these are easier numbers to calculate with, so we know that 5 times 2 is 10, times 1 is 10 cubic centimeters. And again, we put the little 3 to indicate that it's cubic centimeters. And that is it for the recording. If you have more complicated numbers, as you can see in number 2, perhaps you'll have to do your work off to the side to work out what your final answer here is. For numbers that are easier to calculate in your head, you can easily jot down the final answer. It's always helpful for me if you circle your final answer so I know where to locate it. From now on, again, I'll repeat, my expectation is that you set up your work exactly as you see it here, with the formula at the top, the substitution in brackets in the following line. Any work or any extra work you can do off to the side, but then please put in your final answer underneath the substitution line. And that's it.